All right, y'all, welcome back to Hands on Books. I'd love to share some purchases from recent trips, but maybe I'll get to that in a later video because I just ordered another round of books offline and I need to make a dent in this pile, which is kind of good because for the most part, I don't remember what's in it. I'll start with something I do remember though, which I just ordered this. Diaspora by Greg Egan. And I've always read really, really good things about Greg Egan as far as being a hard science fiction author goes. I tried to read Permutation City. Maybe I'll try again someday, but I just am not really caring about VR stories or uploaded consciousness stories, and this one seems completely different from that. So, in the 21st century, humanity drastically reconfigured itself. Many became polis citizens, joining vast computer networks to live as conscious software. Okay, so maybe it's still along those lines, but anyway. Some of the citizens moved into Gleisners, disposable, renewable robotic bodies acting as hardware for their digital minds, intentionally keeping contact with the physical world. Then there are the holdouts, the fleshers, descendants of man, left behind in the muck and jungle of Earth without any genetic connection to the digital world. Some devolved into dream apes, and others cavort in the seas or the air, but all are working to shape out a roughly human future. When an unforeseen disaster ravages the fleshers, it reveals the possibility that the polises themselves might be at risk from bizarre astrophysical processes that seem to violate fundamental laws of nature. The orphan Yatima, a digital being grown from a mind seed, joins a group of citizens and flesher refugees in a search that puts them on the trail of the ancient and elusive transmuters, who have the power to reshape subatomic particles and to cross into the macrocosmos, where the universe we know is nothing but a speck in the higher dimensional vacuum. Yeah, so maybe this is not what I'm looking for. I try not to read too much about these stories because I don't want to give anything away to myself, but in this case, maybe I should have. Greg Egan is a computer programmer and the author of the acclaimed SF novels Permutation City, Terranisia, Quarantine, and the Orthogonal Trilogy, all published by Nightshade Books. He has won the Hugo Award as well as the John W. Campbell Memorial Award. Egan's short fiction has been published in a variety of places, including Interzone, Asimov's, and Nature. He lives in Perth, Australia. Let's read the first page. I'll try to move kind of quick today because I want to get through a decent amount of books. Yatima surveyed the Doppler-shifted stars around the polis, following the frozen, concentric waves of color across the sky from expansion to convergence. V wondered what account they should give of themselves when they finally caught up with their quarry. They'd brought no end of questions to ask, but the flow of information couldn't all be one way. When the transmuters demanded to know, "Why have you followed us? Why have you come so far?" where should V begin? Yatima had read pre-introduce histories told on a single level, bounded by the fictions that individuals were as indivisible as quarks, and planetary civilizations nothing less than self-contained universes. Neither V's own history nor the Diaspora's would fit between those imaginary lines. The real world was full of larger structures, smaller structures, simpler and more complex structures than the tiny portion comprising sentient creatures and their societies, and it required a profound myopia of scale and similarity to believe that everything beyond this shallow layer could be ignored. It wasn't just a question of choosing to bury yourself in a closed world of synthetic scapes. The fleshers had never been immune to this myopia, nor had the most outward-looking citizens. No doubt at some time in their history the transmuters had suffered from it too. Of course, the transmuters would already be aware of the very large, very dead celestial machinery that had driven the Diaspora to Swift and beyond. Their question would be, why have you come so much further? Why have you left your own people behind? Yatima couldn't speak for this fellow traveler, but the answer for Ver lay at the opposite end of the scale, in the realm of the very simple and the very small. Definitely throws a lot of vocab at you in the first page. Let's keep going. Secret Memoirs of a Renaissance Pope by Piccolomini. Folio Society, 1988. The Commentaries of Aeneas Silvius Piccolomini, Pope Pius II. Let me see, maybe the first page of the intro. The Commentaries of Pius II, statesman, poet, humanist, incorrigible traveler, and nature lover, who ascended the papal throne in 1458, constitute one of the most revealing documents of the Renaissance, an epic singularly rich in literary and artistic expression. Like its author, erstwhile Aeneas Silvius Piccolomini, the work fits into no category, combining the features of autobiography, memoir, diary, and history. In its pages is mirrored for us the dynamic, engaging, versatile personality of its genial author. In it is unfolded the drama of that many-faceted era of crisis and tension and glorious creativity, an era no longer medieval and not yet wholly modern. After centuries of obscurity in a Latin edition rigorously expurgated and falsely attributed to another author, the publication for the first time of a complete English edition based on the original manuscript makes available the riches of this unique work. As an abridgment of that edition, the present volume aims to preserve unimpaired the qualities which make the Commentaries a vital human document, setting forth the history of an era and the portrait of one of its most eloquent spokesmen. All right, and let's do the first page of the actual commentaries, 25. This looks like family history, so maybe let me try to find something cool from this table of contents. Let's see if we can get some Joan of Arc content. GHIJ 194 to 201. Here we go. Now when the cause of France was almost desperate, a 16-year-old girl named Jeanne, the daughter of a poor farmer, who was watching pigs in the country near Toul, was inspired by the Holy Spirit, as her later acts prove. Abandoning her herds and disregarding her parents, she went to the prefect of the nearest town, which was the only one in that region that had remained loyal to the French, and asked for guides to take her to the Dauphin. When the prefect asked her reason for going, she said she had a divine message to deliver, which would be the salvation of him and his kingdom. The prefect laughed, and thinking her crazy, paid no attention. When she persisted, he tested her in many ways. He waited some days to see whether she would change her purpose, or whether he could find any fault in her. But when he found her firm and unshakable and innocent of any guile, he said, "How do I know that this is not the will of God? The kingdom of France has often been saved by divine aid. Perhaps in our time too something has been ordained in heaven for our salvation, which is to be revealed through a woman." And choosing 3 servants of proved loyalty, he put the girl in their charge to be taken to the Dauphin. It was a journey of some 10 days, and all the intervening country was in the hands of the enemy or the enemy's friends. The girl, dressed in men's clothing, passed unharmed through all difficulties and came to the Dauphin, who was then at Bourges. Disheartened by so many reverses, he was by now not so much concerned about defending his kingdom as about finding a place where he could live in safety as a private individual. In Spain, the King of Castile and Leon, who was bound to him by ties of blood and friendship, was regarded as the most powerful prince. The Dauphin had resolved to ask him to take over the crown and the government of France and to give him a little corner of the earth where he could hide and be safe. While he was making such plans, the maid came into his presence, and giving him the prefect's letter, begged for a hearing. The Dauphin, disturbed at this strange occurrence, and fearing a trick, sent her to be examined by his own confessor, the Bishop of Castres, a most eminent theologian, and put her in charge of noble matrons. When Jeanne was questioned about her faith, she answered in conformity with the Christian religion. In a footnote here, the account which follows is a very uneven, impressionistic one, inaccurate in certain details. It enlarges upon some episodes and omits or condenses others. Pius writes with a critical detachment mixed with admiration and wonder. It will be recalled that the events here recorded took place only a few years before he himself went to France as a secretary of Cardinal Albergati. The rehabilitation of Joan, after an exhaustive re-examination of the case, occurred in the pontificate of his predecessor, Calixtus III. Thus it is curious that Pius does not write more accurately and more authoritatively of a case that so interested him. When examined as to her character, she was found to be chaste and scrupulously honest. The examination lasted several days. They found in her no trace of deceit or guile or evil intent. The only difficulty was her dress. When asked why she wore men's garments, which were forbidden to women, she replied that she was a maid, and either dress was proper for a maid. She had been instructed by God to wear men's dress, since she was also to wield men's arms. After she had been thus tested, she was again sent before the Dauphin. "I have come to you, O son of kings," she said, "not of my own purpose, but at the command of God. He bids you follow me. If you obey, I will restore to you your throne, and before long I will crown you at Reims." The Dauphin told her she was promising something very difficult to perform. The city of Reims, where kings were crowned, was a long way off. It was in the enemy's hands, and there was no safe road. Orléans, which lay between, was besieged by the English. The French had no resources with which to aid the unhappy beleaguered townsman, much less could they bestir themselves about his coronation. The maid was unmoved by these arguments. "I make no empty promises," she said. "If you trust in God, trust in me also. I have come as his messenger. I will furnish you with arms by divine aid, and with an invisible sword I will open a path. Wherever you go, the people shall obey you, and the nobles of their own will shall follow your standard. Do not talk to me of the siege of Orléans. First of all, I will raise the siege and hand over to you a free city. Only let me have these knights whom you have here." I love Joan of Arc stories. This looks like an awesome book. I've been wanting to read this for a while, and it kind of got lost in the pile. I didn't know when I was going to be able to open it. Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. And this has gotten so many good reviews online, and it seems like such a sort of hokey premise that I had to try it. You know what's worse than breaking up with your girlfriend? Being stuck with her prize-winning show cat. And you know what's worse than that? An alien invasion, the destruction of all man-made structures on Earth, and the systematic exploitation of all the survivors for a sadistic intergalactic game show. That's what. Join Coast Guard vet Carl and his ex-girlfriend's cat, Princess Donut, as they try to survive the end of the world, or just get to the next level, in a video game-like, trap-filled fantasy dungeon. A dungeon that's actually the set of a reality television show with countless viewers across the galaxy. Exploding goblins, magical potions, deadly drug-dealing llamas. This ain't your ordinary game show. Welcome, Crawler. Welcome to the dungeon. Survival is optional. Keeping the viewers entertained is not. Nice hardback. Let's read the first page. Oh, damn, he's got a ton of these books. He wrote this in 2020, and he already has 6 books, maybe 7, in this series. It's really amazing. Rome will exist as long as the Colosseum does. When the Colosseum falls, so will Rome. When Rome falls, so will the world. The Venerable Bede. The transformation occurred at approximately 2:23 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. As far as I could tell, anyone who was indoors when it happened died instantly. If you had any sort of roof over you, you were dead. That included people in cars, airplanes, subways, even tents and cardboard boxes. Hell, probably umbrellas too. Though I'm not so sure about that one. I'm not gonna lie, you guys who were inside, probably warm and asleep and dreaming about some random bullshit, I'm jealous. You're the lucky ones. You were just gone, splattered into dust during the transformation. It was a Tuesday, and the calendar had just ticked over to January 3rd. A terrible winter storm had descended on North America, and half the country was buried in snow and ice. In Seattle, we didn't have too much snow that night, but it was well below zero, which was unusually cold, even for January. I'm sure in other parts of the world where it was warmer and not in the middle of the night, many more people survived. Many more. I also bet most of them were probably wearing more clothes than I was at the time of the incident, and those assholes were smart enough not to go into the light. Me, I didn't have a choice. Like I said, it was below freezing. I was outside, and I was wearing boxers, a leather jacket, and a pair of pink Croc sandals that barely fit me. I was also holding a crying, scratching, squirming, and spitting cat named Princess Donut, the Queen Anne chonk. She was a tortoiseshell Persian cat worth more than I made in a year. My ex-girlfriend called her Princess Donut for short. I just stuck with Donut. So let me back up about 10 minutes. I won't bore you with too much backstory, but some of these details may be important. My name is Carl. I am 27 years old. After a stint in the U.S. Coast Guard, I ended up working as a marine tech, fixing electrical systems for rich assholes and their party boats. I, up until a few days before this started, lived with my girlfriend in our apartment in Seattle. Her name was Beatrice, B. She went to the Bahamas for a New Year's thing with a bunch of friends. She didn't tell me her ex-boyfriend went along with her on the trip. I figured it out pretty quick when I saw the picture of her sitting on his lap on Instagram. I don't like drama, and I don't deal well with it. Whether she was actually cheating on me or not, it didn't matter so much. She lied. So I called her up and I told her we were done. I promised I'd have all her stuff ready for her to go when she got back. No drama, no fuss, but we were done. She asked her parents to come get the cat, but they lived on the other side of the Cascades, and nobody was getting through any of the passes with this weather. So I promised I'd look after her until Beatrice got back. So, let me tell you about Donut the cat. Like I said, she's one of those fluffy, flat-faced cats that look like they need to be sitting on the lap of a Bond villain. B and I shared a 2-bedroom apartment, and one of those rooms was dedicated to the cat, if that tells you anything. More specifically, the room was devoted to Donut's Best in Show ribbons, her Best in Breed ribbons, and countless trophies and framed photographs of her sitting on a table, looking all fuzzy and pissed off while B and a judge stood behind her. B probably had 50 of the pictures. She'd won a mess of ribbons and trophies and photographs pretty much every time Beatrice took Donut to an event, and B took that damn cat to a show almost every weekend. Well, I like the writing so far. I'm definitely going to give this a shot sooner than later. Nice to read something modern for once. Hallāj, Mystic and Martyr by Louis Massignon. Abridged from the 4-volume The Passion of Al-Hallāj, this book explores the life and teaching of a famous 10th century Sufi mystic and martyr, and in so doing describes not only his experience, but also the whole milieu of early Islamic civilization. Louis Massignon, 1883 to 1962, was France's most celebrated Islamic specialist in this century and a leading Catholic intellectual. With profound transcultural sympathy, he wrote of a man who was for him a personal inspiration. A religious group commemorates an event only if such retrospection strengthens its hope in the future and contributes to building the ultimate city that faith promises to it beyond its individual deaths. There are religious personalities who are sentenced to death and excommunicated, yet who end by inserting themselves with real spiritual import, long after their death, into history such as their original community itself conceives it. If Christ is not yet linked again to the historic condition proper to his maternal race, Joan of Arc has been incorporated after 4 centuries into the history of France as a social factor of survival and a leaven of immortality. In the case of Hallāj, judged and sentenced in Baghdad in 309 or 922, the fact of his death only took on a sense of historicity in Islam more than a century later, in 437, 1046, when a Baghdadian vizier, Ali ibn al-Muslima, ex-professional witness at the canonical court, attested to the innocence of this condemned man, still excommunicated, by pausing for a short prayer at the site where Hallāj was tortured, which he called blessed site, on the very day of his investiture, when the official cortege was leading him from the caliphal palace to the cathedral mosque of Al-Mansur. In fact, after the tragic death of this vizier, it was one of his friends, the historian Abu Bakr ibn Thabit Khatib, died 463-1071, who, while compiling the 7,831 biographical notices of his History of Baghdad, or Tariq Baghdad, dared to publish among them a notice on Hallāj, which ranks third in size after those on Abu Hanifa and Bukhari. This history, according to Sunnite Muslim practice, arranges all the names of the muhaddithun of Baghdad in a continuous chronological series going back to the Prophet. The names are of those first transmitters of the sayings of the Prophet who lived and taught in the caliphal capital, and who thereby attested, in an Islamic manner, to the city's living historical continuity. The unexpected presence among them of Hallāj, who transmitted no hadith, indicates that Khatib, like Ibn al-Muslima, memorialized Hallāj as an exemplary Sunnite Muslim, and that his aim was to persuade his Sunnite readers of this view. Already in 445, Khatib had prayed on the Hajj for permission to read his Tariq in public in Baghdad, and he was able to do it in 463, with Sheikh Nasr ibn Ibrahim Makdizi at his right side. Far from being banned, Khatib's history was transmitted from Rawi to Rawi in Baghdad and beyond, making Hallāj finally emerge out of the flux of outdated events and obsolete portraits as a reference point and a cornerstone. It's a pretty sentence. We shall extract from this notice by a historian the only notice that may have come down to us collating official and private sources, two characteristic documentary references to earlier authors, to Kanad, and this is a portrait of Hallāj, a brief literary evocation, restored here according to the Recensio Plenior of Habal, to Ibn Bakuya, and this is the only chronological canvas of the life presented under the name Hamd, the youngest son of Hallāj. These by way of a prologue. All right, I'm going to keep moving. Let's see, one more. This one is extremely well packed, so high hopes. Awesome. War and Peace. I listened to half of this on an audiobook, and I found I found a narrator that I really loved, and then I could never find the second half. So I've been meaning to get back to it. The Mod translation, revised with illustrations by Vasily Vereshchagin and Fritz Eichenberg, by the Heritage Press, so I'm excited because this is going to be a really nice copy too. (1938). All right. Page 1 of War and Peace incoming. Part 1, That Antichrist. Picture of Napoleon. The soiree at Anna Scherer's. Well, Prince, so Genoa and Lucca are now just family estates of the Buonapartes. But I warn you, if you don't tell me that this means war, if you still try to defend the infamies and horrors perpetuated by that Antichrist, I really believe he is the Antichrist, I will have nothing more to do with you, and you are no longer my friend, no longer my faithful slave, as you call yourself. But how do you do? I see I have frightened you. Sit down and tell me all the news. It was in July 1805, and the speaker was the well-known Anna Pavlovna Scherer, maid of honor and favorite of the Empress Maria Fedorovna. With these words she greeted Prince Vasily, a man of high rank and importance, who was the first to arrive at her reception. Anna Pavlovna had had a cough for some days. She was, as she said, suffering from la grippe, grippe being then a new word in St. Petersburg, used only by the elite. All her invitations, without exception, written in French, and delivered by a scarlet-liveried footman that morning, ran as follows. If you have nothing better to do, Count or Prince, and if the prospect of spending an evening with a poor invalid is not too terrible, I shall be very charmed to see you tonight between 7 and 10. Annette Scherer. Heavens, what a virulent attack, replied the prince, not in the least disconcerted by this reception. He had just entered, wearing an embroidered court uniform, knee breeches, and shoes, and had stars on his breast and a serene expression on his flat face. He spoke in that refined French in which our grandfathers not only spoke but thought, and with the gentle, patronizing intonation natural to a man of importance who had grown old in society and at court. He went up to Anna Pavlovna, kissed her hand, presenting to her his bald, scented, and shining head, and complacently seated himself on the sofa. First of all, dear friend, tell me how you are. Set your friend's mind at rest, said he without altering his tone, beneath the politeness and affected sympathy of which indifference and even irony could be discerned. Great description. Can one be well while suffering morally? Can one be calm in times like these if one has any feeling? Said Anna Pavlovna. You are staying the whole evening, I hope. And the fete at the English ambassador's? Today is Wednesday. I must put in an appearance there, said the prince. My daughter is coming for me to take me there. I thought today's fete had been cancelled. I confess all these festivities and fireworks are becoming wearisome. If they had known that you wished it, the entertainment would have been put off, said the prince, who, like a wound-up clock, by force of habit said things he did not even wish to be believed. Don't tease. Well, and what has been decided about Novosiltsev's dispatch? You know everything. What can one say? Replied the prince in a cold, listless tone. What has been decided? They have decided that Bonaparte has burnt his boats, and I believe that we are ready to burn ours. All right, that's enough of War and Peace. I'll get back to it someday, I'm sure. I'll do one more. Robert Silverberg, Gilgamesh the King. The epic tale of Gilgamesh, the legendary god-king of Sumeria who discovered the secret of eternal life, has inflamed the imagination of countless generations. In Gilgamesh the King, award-winning author Robert Silverberg gives us a vivid portrait of a courageous, lusty, sometimes reckless ruler of men. It is the majestic tale of a man haunted by gods, tormented by his passion for a woman who was his greatest rival, and driven by a thirst for immortality. Chapter 1. There is in Uruk the city a great platform of kiln-baked brick that was the playing field of the gods, long before the flood, in that time when mankind had not yet been created, and they alone inhabited the earth. Every 7th year for the past 10,000 years we have painted the bricks of that platform white with a plaster of fine gypsum, so that it flashes like a vast mirror under the eye of the sun. I like the writing already. The white platform is the domain of the goddess Inanna, to whom our city is consecrated. Many of the kings of Uruk have erected temples upon the platform for her use, and of all these shrines of the goddess none was more grand than the one that was built by my royal grandfather, the hero Enmerkar. 1,000 artisans labored for 20 years to construct it, and the ceremony of its dedication lasted 11 days and 11 nights without cease, and during that time the moon was wrapped each evening in a deep mantle of blue light as a token of Inanna's pleasure. We are Inanna's children, the people sang, and Enmerkar is her brother, and he shall reign forever and ever. Nothing remains of that temple now, for I tore it down after I came to the throne and put up a far more splendid one on its site. But in its time it was a wonder of the world. It is a place that will always hold special meaning for me. Within its precincts, one day in my childhood, the beginnings of wisdom descended on me, and the shape of my life was shaped, and I was set upon a course from which there has been no turning. That was the day on which the palace servants fetched me from my games to watch my father the king, divine Lugalbanda, embark upon the last of his journeys. Lugalbanda goes forth now to the bosom of the gods, they told me, and he shall live for all time among them in joy, and drink their wine and eat their bread. I think and hope that they were right, but it may very well be the case that my father's final journey has brought him instead to the land of no returning, to the house of dust and darkness, where his ghost shuffles about sadly like a bird with crippled wings, feeding on dry clay. I do not know. I am he whom you call Gilgamesh. I am the pilgrim who has seen everything within the confines of the land and far beyond it. I am the man to whom all things were made known, the secret things, the truths of life and death, most especially those of death. I have coupled with Inanna in the bed of sacred marriage. I have slain demons and spoken with gods. I am 2 parts god myself, and only 1 part mortal. Here in Uruk I am king, and when I walk through the streets I walk alone, for there is no one who dares approach me too closely. I would not have it that way, but it is too late to alter matters now. I am a man apart, a man alone, and so will I be to the end of my days. Once I had a friend who was the heart of my heart, the self of myself, but the gods took him from me, and he will not come again. Beautiful writing. Awesome. Okay, that's it. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. If this is something you enjoyed, feel free to like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Hopefully you were introduced to a new title or a topic that piqued your interest. You might want to pursue it more. Until next time, happy reading.